everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who may be new here, welcome. It's nice to have you. I hope that you want to stay. If you aren't aware of who I am, my name is Amy and I'm a true crime YouTuber from Australia. If you like what you see today, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really does massive things for me behind the scenes and I would appreciate it so much. I appreciate you all being here. I hope that you enjoy the case that I'm going to be talking about today. Go and get a coffee, glass of water, snack, whatever tickles your fancy, and let's get into today's case. Today's case is about Azumi Muto, who was born in Tokyo on June 13th, 1986. She was the youngest of the 3 children and she had 2 older brothers, one which she did not get along with at all. Now I know from my own personal experience of being the eldest of 4 kids in my family that sibling rivalry and having, fights here and there are super normal. But in this case, I will be discussing one of the most brutal cases of sibling rivalry that I have ever encountered. This case isn't for the faint of heart. It does have some pretty gory details. So if that's not the type of case that you like listening to, I encourage you to please click off now and I hope to see you in the next one. For those of you who may not know, Tokyo is one of the most advanced cities in the world and has a population of 38 million people. Tokyo is best known for their anime, electronics, manga, and video games. The city also becomes a jungle of electric lights and colors at night, providing a sensory overload for visitors. Getting lost, window shopping, and photography are top activities in Tokyo, and is known for having a very safe and secure feeling when traveling throughout the city. The Muto family were a part of a long line of dentists, and this included Azumi's parents, her grandparents, and other relatives that were well-established dentists. Azumi's grandfather had actually started a dentist clinic in Shibuya, Tokyo in the 1950s, and her parents were hoping that all of their children would follow in their footsteps and eventually end up working in these clinics along with all of the family members. Now for some further context, there are 3 children in the Muto family, first being Azumi, who was the youngest, Yuki, who was the middle child, and the eldest brother, who eventually went on to become a dentist himself. However, Azumi didn't want to become a dentist. She wanted to do and be something else, something different. She had thoughts about becoming a programmer, a model, an actress, but she never really settled on the one thing that she wanted to do. And I think that that's quite normal. I mean, heck, I'm 30 and I still sometimes change my mind every couple of years. And I think for the age that she was at the time, it is so normal to not know what you want to do and to potentially want to do multiple things at once. Yuki, on the other hand, actually had a natural passion and a huge drive to be in the family business. He wanted to be a dentist. That was his dream, and he was working towards that. Along with the dental business, Azumi's parents also owned many properties. Azumi and her brothers were actually directors in the family property franchise, essentially, so they all had a part and a cut in all of the properties that the parents owned. So the family, and especially the parents of these 3 kids, were obviously quite wealthy. They really did have their best interest in heart, and they wanted to set their kids up with the best futures and really just didn't want them to have to worry about anything. Every single child in that family was destined to be affluent. They were not going to fail, and Azumi just didn't want to fit into that. She wanted to be different. Now this is all until Azumi and her brother Yuki ran into some problems. There was obviously some sort of bad blood between the 2 siblings, and it was all because Azumi didn't want to follow the path of her family and her 2 siblings. She wanted to follow her own path and not the path that her parents wanted her to follow. So as I mentioned before, Yuki was very keen on becoming a dentist. He wanted to be a part of the family business. He wanted to follow the family tradition, so to speak. But Azumi wanted something different. She wanted more for her life. She wanted more creativity. She wanted to be able to dabble into different pools and just be as creative as possible. When I was reading about her when researching this case, I felt like she was just such an artistic, bubbly individual that really just didn't want to be trapped. She didn't want to be stuck doing, you know, the 9-to-5 mundane thing. She wanted to just be able to be more of a free spirit. Azumi was a beautiful girl, and I truly believe that she could have made a name for herself in modeling and acting. Not only because she was a beautiful girl, but her drive, her passion, and her overall talent. Over time, she did actually find some luck in the modeling and acting industry, and she ended up making a small name for herself whilst picking up some random roles here and there. Small roles, but she started to make a name for herself. She actually got a role in an anime film called Cream Lemon. Now, it was more for the adult viewers, so when her parents found out about this, they were not happy. This reaction from her family did push her away and caused a lot of frustration for Azumi. However, she had no home of her own, she had no steady income, she was only getting small roles, so I would imagine that you're not really getting much to take part in those. So unfortunately, she did actually rely on her parents. All while this was happening and Azumi was discovering herself, Yuki was going through study to become a dentist, but he had failed 3 times already. He had put a lot of pressure on himself, and he really wanted to make his parents proud of him by following in his family's footsteps. But he was really having trouble making this happen. He also really just wanted to have a really secure career and be set for life. He also had a creative flair for gardens and was hoping to pursue that passion further when he had a good, stable income and had the extra money to be able to do it. Now, Yuki was frustrated. He just felt like nothing was working out for him. He was studying, he was trying really hard, but he just wasn't passing. And on the other hand, his sister Azumi was also going through similar struggles. And they were both meeting at the same point in life of wanting to be more than what they could be right now, and they both had frustrations and they just were feeling really down on themselves. So in that moment, they could both relate to each other quite well. Now let's talk about Yuki for a moment. Let's get to know him a little bit better. Yuki was a shy guy. He was more on the introverted side, and friends of his would say that he was kind of giving off creepy and dark energy, and that they never really knew what he was thinking, and honestly, they didn't want to be around him. That is such an odd thing to say about a friend. Like, it's okay for him to be naturally quiet and reserved, but they're saying that they actually didn't want to be around him. Okay, that's interesting. There were also a number of weird rumors about Yuki in their community. They would take note of Yuki actually having a weird liking towards his sister Azumi, just the way he would look at her. People just found it odd, and it wasn't just one person that said that. There was a few. People did genuinely wonder if there was something going on between the two of them, but overall it was just community gossip. There was no substance to support these theories. There was just nothing solid to match everyone's assumptions. Azumi did make note to her friends that she did feel a bit strange around her brother days prior, but she just put it down to him being under immense stress in regards to his assignments that were coming up, and didn't really think too much into it. But it is worth noting that she did say that she was just feeling a bit weird. So for me, I would follow that gut instinct, but obviously there was a lot of stress in the household, so she probably just wiped it off. Now this brings us to December 20th, 2006. Both Azumi and Yuki were left at home whilst the rest of the family went away to visit family over in another town. The reason why they were both left at home was because Yuki wanted to focus on his 4th assessment. And he really needed to focus on his final studies to really become that dentist that he wanted so bad. And Azumi had other commitments and wanted to focus on her acting career during this period. Unfortunately, this would have been the worst mistake that Azuki could have made. It was said that Azumi was talking to Yuki, like siblings would, asking how his exams are going, and apparently Yuki said that she was upsetting him because she was talking about how he wasn't going to do well, he was going to fail again, and he was never going to become a dentist. She was saying things like, "You failed 3 times, what makes you think you're gonna pass this one? I mean, come on, be realistic." Now, we aren't 100% sure if this is actually correct and this is what went down between the siblings, because we only have Yuki's confession from the day. But this obviously would have made Yuki really upset, really mad at his sister, and ultimately it filled him with rage. So he stormed off to his room. He grabbed his kendo sword, which essentially is a wooden version of a katana. Yuki went into the other room where Azumi was, and he started hitting her across the head with the sword, over and over and over and over again. Azumi did her absolute best to fight her brother off. Even though she was fighting back, it was said that she was still throwing insults at her brother and just really filling him with more rage. Yuki said in his confession that even though she was fighting back, she was also still throwing insults at him about he will never be nothing in the future and he was a failure and he only wanted to be a dentist to impress his family, and that she was essentially better than him because she was following her true passions. This enraged Yuki. Like, I can imagine he is probably fuming. He is full of rage for his sister at this point. So Yuki grabbed a towel and put it over Azumi's face and continued to strangle his sister. In Yuki's confession, he said that he grabbed this towel because he just wanted his sister to shut up. He was absolutely done with her talking. What I find even more telling, and this really paints a picture of where his mind was really at, he had heard on a television show that you need to strangle someone for 180 seconds for them to essentially die. So that is exactly what he did. He strangled his own sister and he counted to 180 while strangling her with a towel. But after he had finished counting, Azuki was still breathing. She was obviously fighting her absolute hardest to stay alive. So Yuki took her to the bathroom and he placed her head in the bathtub, where he filled the bath with water and forced her head down to essentially drown her until she passed away. Now, Azuki has passed away and Yuki is obviously stepping away, kind of, you know, seeing what the damage is, so to speak, and he sees blood everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Now remember, he was beating her relentlessly with his kendo sword. She would have cuts, bruises all over her body, but this actually worked well in Yuki's mind and he had a plan. Yuki went to another room in the house and found a knife, and he found a saw, and then he went back to the bathroom where his sister's body was. And this is where he would start to dismember his sister's body and get rid of it. He started with cutting all of her limbs off her torso, but also started cutting off her breasts and genitalia. What was the purpose of this, do you ask? Well, he essentially wanted to throw the authorities off. He thought that cutting off her breasts and genitalia, that would mean that Azumi would never be identified, because how could you tell if it was a male or a female? And he thought that this would delay the crime and essentially he would never be found being the suspect. But now, Yuki, he isn't too smart. He didn't think of things like DNA, such as teeth, any significant markings that she may have, like tattoos, scars. But anyways, let's carry on. So in Korea and Japan, I have read that bathrooms are actually waterproofed well up to the ceiling. Sometimes even the ceiling is waterproof as well, which means that you can essentially go and get a hose or a gurney and clean your whole bathroom from floor to ceiling and you will make literally no damage. And to be honest with you, that's what Yuki did. He hosed down the whole bathroom, cleaned all of the blood, just absolutely like sanitized the whole bathroom. There was absolutely no sign of a struggle. There was no sign that anyone had been harmed. There wasn't even sign of someone potentially just having a nosebleed. There was absolutely nothing. It was spotless. Once he was done with cleaning, he actually took the body parts and divided them up into 4 individual bags. And he hid them in his bedroom closet and continued on with his day, left the house and went to study class. Yep, he just popped them in his cupboard. But before he went to study class, he took a pair of his sister's underwear. Yep, you heard that right. And why, do you ask? Well, I have no idea. But remember prior when I mentioned that people thought that there was something going on between them, or he just had a weird vibe towards his sister? I guess that kind of checks out now. Yeah. It's now January 3rd and the Muto family has returned home. They noticed that Yuki wasn't home, but they didn't really think much of it because he normally has study class at this time of day. However, they also noticed that Azumi wasn't home, and they weren't aware of her being out for any particular reason either, but in the end they just assumed maybe she was out doing something. Since it had been a few days since Azumi had been murdered, the family start to notice a weird smell in the house, specifically coming from their son's bedroom. So they ended up asking him. He got home and they're like, hey, what's that smell? It's coming from your room. And he was like, oh, it's just my pet fish. It died. I just haven't taken it out of the tank. Like, I'll clean it when I get a chance. So his parents essentially were like, oh, okay, yep, that makes sense. I don't know about you guys. I've definitely smelled a dead fish. It does have a gross smell, but it's not, I can imagine the smell that they were smelling, and that is not coming from a dead fish. So to be fair to them, yes, dead fish smell, it is gross. They probably didn't think anything of it, but then the smell got worse and it started to linger through the whole house. So as you would do, the parents, they went into their son's room and they were looking for the smell. So they went straight to the fish tank, and the fish was still in the fish tank. The fish was fine, the fish was not dead. And they were just like, this smell, like, we can't deal with it. So they followed their nose and it took them to their son's closet. And when they opened the closet, they came across 4 bags of body parts, rotting flesh. So his parents called the police straight away. They obviously knew that he had done something really, really bad. But before the police came, they actually interrogated Yuki themselves, and he eventually went on to admit that he had killed Azumi. He'd killed his sister. As the news started to break that this murder had happened in such a well-known, affluent family, you can imagine that the headlines were thick and they came fast. This son of dentist, he killed his sister. He chopped her up and he put her away like an item of clothing. Even though Yuki was guilty and his family knew this didn't stop the parents hiring a very good defense attorney, trying to get the best outcome for Yuki, to provide his innocence somehow. And how they would do this is by the attorney making a case based around Yuki's mental health being unstable, and how he wasn't in the right mind when he committed this crime and essentially shouldn't be trialed as a sane person. It doesn't really sit right with me that the parents were trying to get Yuki a good outcome. Now, as a mother myself, I have a lot of empathy for the parents in this case. I cannot even imagine what they were feeling during this, but I do believe that their daughter Azuki deserved better and needed more support to get her killer behind bars. She didn't deserve this. Yuki was not well and he obviously needed help, but he also needs to be found guilty and punished for what he did to his sister. The Muto family's attorney hired a psychiatrist and ultimately said that Yuki did not have the capacity to tell from right or wrong during the murder, and not to be held accountable for his actions, as he is criminally insane in their professional opinion. Prosecutors ultimately thought that this was not right. It was clear that there was some sort of sibling rivalry, because they both did not like each other and they did not get along. They fought so bad and so often that one day, it was the last time, someone actually got killed. On May 12th, 2008, prosecutors requested 17 years imprisonment for Yuki, whereas his psychiatrist claimed that he had diminished responsibility or was criminally insane. On May 27th, 2008, the Tokyo District Court sentenced him to 7 years imprisonment, saying that he was criminally insane when he dismembered her body. Yuki was sentenced to 7 years behind bars. Yep, 7 years. What? For a murder, a brutal murder, 7 years. However, flash forward, April 28th, 2009, the Tokyo High Court revoked his original sentence, and they ultimately sentenced him to 12 years. They believed that Yuki did know what he was doing. He was able to tell police in his statement exactly what happened, and like I mentioned earlier, he was counting to 180 seconds. He knew what he was doing. 12 years is still not enough, but at least he was away for a longer time. Now it's 2023 and Yuki is a free man. He is no longer in jail and I am sure he's living his absolute best life, whilst his sister is only a memory to those who loved her and will forever miss her. That is all from me today. I hope that you enjoyed this case and that you learned something new. I appreciate you being here and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, night, afternoon, wherever you are in this world. I hope you have a good one. Bye.